Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be doing something that I've not attempted to do before, which is to go over the syllabus guide for IB Economics 2022, and I'm going to be going through it from a higher level student perspective. I'm going to be going through all of these understandings and these syllabus points, and what I'm going to do is highlight them as we go and explain to you what they are. So if you guys are new here, I basically make videos on IB subjects, the ones I study right now. I'm in grade 12 currently and doing DP2, and November exams are coming up, so I thought that as a way for me to test myself and help you guys out, I will make this video where I go through this. So for this video, I'm considering doing topic Unit 1, which it has some quite unconventional elements, I like to say. So for instance, this stuff, the economic thought. So economic thought wasn't really studied this heavily in the previous syllabus, but now it is. Like, you have to know all these facts. And this topic is, or Unit 1 is quite short, as you can see. Unit 2 is microeconomics, Unit 3 is macro, and then Unit 4 is global. So without further ado, let's get started with these syllabus points. So the first point you need to know is that economics is a social science. What's a social science? Well, you most likely know that psychology is a social science. When you think about a social science, you think about society. We're studying society itself, or we're looking at people. Economics is a lot to do with people. In fact, it is so much to do with people that there's such great uncertainty in the subject itself. Because unlike a chemistry experiment, we can't control the variables. People are quite unpredictable, which is why economics is largely to do with theory, where the application of the theory doesn't really result in the same things as what you'd expect in theory. And that point I wanted to make, I'm not rambling by the way, is something that's key in your evaluation when you write Part Bs or Part Gs in your paper 2s. So what I mean by that is sometimes you apply a policy and it may not actually be the same as what you expect. So you could expect monetary policy to lower aggregate demand, or actually expansionary monetary policy to increase aggregate demand, but if there's low confidence in the people in the economy, then that may not actually happen. AD may not increase. So just as an example, that's something where the social science aspects really hold out, and you can't have what you expect occur in the real world. Whereas in chemistry, if you expect the Haber process to occur under the same conditions, if you actually practically do that, replicate the experiment, then that will happen. So kind of important, and actually not kind of important, very important, this social nature. You don't have to mention it in an exam, but you need to remember this and embed it into ideas so that you know how to evaluate effectively. Another important thing is that economics is split into micro and macroeconomics. If you're using this for revision, you would probably know what it means. Microeconomics looks at individual markets, whereas macroeconomics looks at the whole entire economy, and then global economics looks at all economies together. Next, you need to go over these 9 key concepts: scarcity, choice, efficiency, equity, economic well-being, sustainability, change, independence, and intervention. Now, these 9 key central topics are not really that much going to be assessed in the exams. It's going to be assessed in your IAs. So if I make an IA video in the future, then I will be making note of these and going through these in depth. But scarcity, there's an actual syllabus point right here for scarcity, so I'll talk about it there. Choice, efficiency, these words are used in everyday language, and there's a similar meaning in economics, but you should be wary that most of the time there is a slightly different meaning to these words in the context of economics, but that'll be on a IA video. The problem of choice, factors of production, land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So in economics, production is a key idea, and we have something called businesses or firms which produce things. And to produce things, we need resources, we need inputs, right? If you want to make an output, which is a good or service, we need inputs. And the inputs are land, which is the gifts of nature, which include the land itself, trees, and other natural resources; labor, humans, and the resource of humans, and their skills. Capital is machinery or man-made items that assist in the production process. Entrepreneurship is the ability of individuals to take risk and basically organize the factors of production in a meaningful way. So if you think of an entrepreneur like Elon Musk, he had to take a risk when he started some of his companies. Where he started Tesla, he organized the factors of production. He's like, do this, do that. He hires people, etc. He gets computers to do something. He uses capital. He organized factors of production. He's an entrepreneur, and we'll learn more about this in the circular flow model later on. Unlimited human needs and wants are met by limited resources. Now you'd think that you just have a moment to think about all the things you want in life, the materialistic things. You probably have a whole heap of things that you could go on a list, and most people also have something like this, a huge list of things they want. But the reality is not everyone gets what they want. And that's the idea of scarcity. Because we have unlimited needs and wants as humans, but resources are actually limited. Everyone may want diamond rings, but not everyone gets diamond rings because diamonds are limited. We can't all have diamond rings. And that's important. We might think that if you're clever, you might realize that if diamonds were not actually rare or limited, if they were unlimited, people wouldn't actually value them as much. And that's something we'll get onto later. Scarcity and sustainability. Sustainability is the ability to, okay, I can't use the word ability. Maybe sustainability is, yeah, you can probably use ability. Sustainability is the ability to conduct activities without taking away the ability of future generations to conduct activities. So sustainable production means that producing without taking away the ability of future generations to produce. So for example, if you're let's say sustainably fishing, then you're not depleting the fish stocks so much that those fish do not regenerate anymore. And this topic of fish and sustainability is going to be addressed in macroeconomics, I believe. Was it no, microeconomics? We're going to be looking at common pool resources. That's an important part. Next up, we have opportunity cost, which is the benefits of the next best alternative foregone when a choice is made. So if you're thinking about McDonald's versus KFC, you chose McDonald's, then the opportunity cost would be the KFC you could have eaten, the fried chicken you could have eaten. And that's why it's called the cost of choice. Whenever you make a choice, you give up something. Now, free goods are goods that do not have an opportunity cost, like breathing air, you could say, because when you breathe air, you're not taking away any you're not choosing between another alternative. And free goods generally are not scarce. So for example, if I have water in the ocean, I can take a bit of water. I don't have to pay for it. I don't have to give up any other choice other than, I guess, time. You could consider time to be the opportunity cost, but at this level of economics, we consider air to be a free good, or water in the ocean. Like water in the ocean in a sense that you take a cup and then pick it up, not like you use it for a hydropower station in some country, which then on a large scale level, water would not be a free good in general, and nothing is a free good on a large scale. It's just that if you use something is so abundant, if you use a small bit of it, it will be essentially a free good, and it wouldn't cost you anything. Basic economic questions are related to what an economy is, and an economy has to answer these questions: what and how much to produce. So this is all to do with making decisions on production. So it's like, oh, what should I produce? And how much to produce is the quantity. So this is type and quantity of goods or services. So some economies may focus on producing a whole lot of defense. So command economies may focus on that. And there's also a lot of consumer goods. Like in the US, sometimes US is considered quite a free market. It's generally considered a free market economy where it's basically consumer needs that are fulfilled. So consumers want a lot of consumer goods like handbags or like, I don't even know, sunglasses. People want a lot of that stuff, so that's what's produced. How to produce is or the methods behind production. So you can produce shoes in factories. You can produce them in, I'm not sure, huts. There are so many different ways you can produce them, but the method behind production is generally to do with factors of production and how you organize them. And based on that, you can have inefficient production, efficient production, etc. And for whom to produce means who is getting that final output. So if you produce shoes, who's getting that shoes? Who's getting the shoes? Is it the top 10% of the country? Is it some guy named John? Is it just, it can be anything, right? You could say production is happening for foreigners maybe in an economy. So for example, US imports a lot of shrimp from Thailand. So Thailand would be producing, and for whom are they producing? They're producing some of that shrimp for US. And by the way, I'm going to be referring to exports, imports, some of these macro, micro concepts. I'm assuming that you're going to be using my videos for revision. So you've already covered the syllabus in quite a good detail, or just generally understand the economic syllabus so that you can understand what I make links to the future topics that we haven't covered yet in Unit 1. It's more like a revision tool, so I'm going to be referring to those. Means of answering these economic questions. So market economy is where the market decides all these questions. So supply and demand in microeconomics, you remember, those interactions are what determines how to produce, how much to produce, and for whom to produce and what to produce. Whereas government intervention is in a command economy, and this is where you have the government deciding these economic questions. So free market economy, planned economy, and then a mixed economy is a bit of both. And in reality, this is where economics is social science, where you don't have the extremes, the theoretical extremes. So these are free market and planned economy are theoretical extremes. We actually have this in the real world, the mixed economy. So no economy is fully government planned, no economy is fully free market. Next, we have this diagram called the PPC, and I'm going to be drawing it out. So it might be a bit messy, but that's basically the PPC. And you have one type of good here. We'll call it good A. It can be capital goods, consumer goods, but you can do good A, good B. What this means is when we produce at this level, let's say A, this level is B. This is how much, at point A, this is how much good A we're producing, and this is how much good B we're producing. And if we produce at level B, we're going to be producing this much good B, this much good A. So the PPC I would define as an economic model that illustrates the maximum possible quantity of two goods and services that can be goods or services that can be produced when all of an economy's factors of production are fully employed. Let's go over that. So there are two goods. That's one of the assumptions in the production possibility. So curve. So there are two goods. And in the PPC, we explore all these concepts. But another important thing is full employment. Full employment means you use something to the maximum capacity. So I want you to think about it this way. If you own a Domino's and you hire a worker, if that worker is working inefficiently, that's not full employment because they could be working even more efficiently, right? So efficiency is important. So in the PPC, we have this line here. This line, we call it the production possibilities frontier. We call it the frontier because you can't go beyond that in terms of production. This is the maximum we can reach. The maximum amount we can produce of as a combination of good A, good B. So A, we can produce where we produce this much good B, this much good A. We can't produce out here because we don't have the sufficient resources. We're using everything as much as we can. We're drying them. We're milking them dry, these resources. We can't go outside of the PPC, the frontier. Next, one of the other important concepts, I'm not going to go over this first. I'm going to go over this. Features of the model. So opportunity cost. Again, this is to do with choice as well. So you can choose to produce at either point A or B. If you choose A, that means you produce this much of good A, this much of good B. However, if you choose to move to good B, you give up some A, you produce more B. So to produce more B, the opportunity cost was this much A. So that's how opportunity cost is there. The concept of scarcity, where resources are limited, it's the whole idea that factors of production are fully used and you cannot go beyond this production possibilities frontier. That's the concept of scarcity. People may want to produce at this point C, but you can't because this is the max. Unemployment of resources. So as you might have guessed, resources are not going to be fully employed in the real world, right? So what happens is most economies actually operate on a point inside the PPC where they are not at full employment, at full efficiency. So there's some inefficiency, there's some unemployment of resources. And unemployment is a concept in economics where we talk about in terms of labor, but unemployment can refer to any factor of production. Unemployment of land. Employment does not necessarily have to be a job. It can be about just using resources and whether they're used or not. Next up, the concept of efficiency. Efficiency, again, because you have to be efficient when you produce there. If there's a loss of efficiency, you'd move inside of here, so you'd produce at like point D, maybe. If there's greater efficiency, well, you from D, you could produce at the point in the frontier, so you can increase in efficiency and go there. Actual growth and growth in production possibilities. The actual growth is when you literally produce more, right? And so if you go from point D to point, like let's call this point E, right on the curve, right? If you go from point D to E, you're going to be producing more of B and more of A. See how this is higher and to the right of D. So that's a bit messy, but E is higher. E is higher, so it's going to produce more good A, and it's to the right of D, so it's going to produce more good B. So because of this relationship, what happens is good production point E represents actual growth, where you're producing more. So that's called growth in an economy. Economic growth is a concept we're going to get to in macro, so save that for later. But there's also a point. There's also something called growth in production possibilities. And as you might guess, when you talk about possibilities, it's about the productive capacity of the economy. It's when this whole frontier, actually shifts out. So didn't mean to put an arrow there. So this frontier shifts out from here, from this darker black one to the lighter black one. Shifts out. There's a growth in production possibilities. As you might guess, there could be negative actual growth. So if you go from point E to D, then that's negative actual growth. If you go from this lighter line to the darker line, that's negative growth in production possibilities. And as you can see, assessment objective 4 means that you can get asked basically super high level questions on it, like evaluate questions and illustrating choice opportunity cost. It's basically what I explained. You've got to be able to explain that in words. And when you explain in words, you've got to refer to points on a diagram, which is really important if you want to score highly. PPC showing increasing versus constant opportunity costs. Okay, so we've looked at all of this. So probably shouldn't, yeah, that's fine. Next up, we have another economic model. We call it the circular flow of income. So circular flow of income is something we look at in macro, but I'm just going to be quite brief. You have households. All right, let me use a darker color than black. So you have households on the right H, businesses, and what happens is households provide businesses with factors of production: land, labor, capital, enterprise. In return, you get the returns for factors of production, which are called income. So income you think of as salaries, but income consists of the return for labor, which is rent; return for capital, which is interest? Yeah, return for labor, which is salaries and wages; return for entrepreneurship, which is profit. We're gonna get to more of that more in macro, so just take my word for now. And when you have factors of production given to businesses, what do they do with it? They produce goods and services, which are then produced for households. Households want goods and services. And how do they do it? They spend money on goods and services. That's called consumption expenditure. We put it as a C. This is the circular flow of income. This is just the standard model where you have households and businesses. But the reality is, of an economy, you'd think that there are more parts to this equation. It's not just businesses and households. There are other key stakeholders, like who? There's financial sector, which consists of banks. And this money that could have been spent on goods and services, sometimes, people don't actually spend all their money. They rather save it. S stands for savings. This reduces money in the circular flow of income, which is called a leakage. Next, there's an injection where businesses can spend money on capital expenditure, which is called investment. Right? Investment is called an injection because it pumps money. So this circular flow of income is literally showing the movement of income or money. Investment leads to money being pumped in back to the circular flow. Okay, circular flow, we consider this to be the circular flow. Since money's pumped back in, you can think of as an injection being given to you like a needle, so an injection, pumped back, money pumped back into the economy. Similarly, you have another type of leakage which is called taxation. You can think about the government taxing you. That takes money away from consumption, so you can't consume everything. And the government also spends money increasing not increasing sorry, but increasing consumption activity or the purchase of goods and services. Actually, just think about it. Government increases the size of the circular flow through government expenditure. Government expenditure is spending by government on goods and services or um, other items or services. Just government spending in general. We'll go into that in my macro, but you can think about it this way: if government spends money on building a new bridge, that's government expenditure. If government spends on welfare payments where they pay poor people who are unemployed, that's also government expenditure. Next up, we've got the foreign sector, or we call it the open. Well, this is something we call an open circular flow of income model. So here, where we have nothing, we have no foreign sector. We call this a closed economy, economy or closed circular flow of income. But when you have the foreign sector, right? These all sectors: financial sector, government sector, foreign sector. What we have is an open circular flow of income, and the foreign sector leakage is called imports, and we put an M for that. And the injection is exports, which is an X. So the cool thing here to note is that you have imports and exports, and imports, when you buy an import from a different country, you have to spend money, but that money doesn't go into your own circular flow of income. It actually goes to the other countries. So it goes out of the circular flow of income, making it a leakage. However, if you export something to another country and someone buys it, the money comes back to your country, your circular flow of income. So exports are a form of injection. So we've already looked at circular flow of income just then. And as you can see, because of all these links between the key stakeholders, what you realize is that there's a lot of independence and interaction between people, households, firms, foreign sector. And we learned about leakages and injections, and we have been able to draw this diagram. Economic methodology, there's positive economics. Positive economics is all about what things were or will be, and it's all about factual statements and logic, right? An example would be, the real GDP of Australia is 2.5% bigger than last year. So there's a 2.5% increase in real GDP in Australia. That's something that's logical. That's a fact, right? That can be confirmed through empirical evidence, which is just evidence through observation. That can be confirmed through calculation, etc. The use of hypotheses, models, and theories. So hypotheses is sort of like a prediction that you test and whether confirm or support or refute, support or refute based on evidence. And that's the key idea here. You might say the Australian economy is largely dependent on consumption expenditure or government expenditure. So if you say the Australian economy is highly dependent on government expenditure, that's the hypothesis. You might then have some empirical evidence, like collect some statistics, and if they're wrong, you might refute the idea. If they're right, you might keep the theory or hypothesis. Hypothesis can become theory, so the theory of so when you think about theory, you might think just a hunch or prediction, but just like in science, if you're a good IB student, you already know that theories in science are much more than just hunches. They're not like a theory you make up. You got to have lots of evidence to back it up. So theory needs evidence in economics as well, and we'll look into some theories later. Models, we already looked at 2 models. We looked at the PPC and we looked at circular flow of income. So there are lots of models in economics, and positive economics makes use of those. Ceteris paribus is a Latin term which means all things equal, and that's the idea in economics, how it's a social science and there are so many factors that affect whatever we're testing. Like in science, like in let's say chemistry, we can't in chemistry we can control a lot of things. We have the controlled variables, but in economics, if we test anything out, we can't control everything because it's a social science. It's to do with humans. We can't control people. So ceteris paribus is the idea that everything else is equal. So we assume that everything else is equal. and this helps in the realm of theories because you like the law of demand states that ceteris paribus, as the price of a product increases, the quantity demanded of the product decreases, and vice versa. So you need ceteris paribus because if there could be another factor like the income level of consumers, which may alter demand in the economy, and that would mean that the theory is incorrect, and that's bad. So we need to make the ceteris paribus assumption. Normative economics is all about judgment and opinionated statements. So you could say the unemployment rate in Australia is high or too high. Too high is probably better. And a positive version of that would be the unemployment rate in Australia is 5%. See how this can be confirmed? The positive statement can be confirmed. The normative statement is more opinion. The meaning of equity and equality. Equity and equality we'll look at more in macroeconomics, but a shorthand is equality is everyone getting the same thing. Equity means everyone is at the same level. So what I like to think about is if you have people who are near a fence and there's something a scene on the other side, equality would be giving everyone a stool to stand on, so giving everyone the stool to stand on. But equity would be giving people stools based on height, so that everyone, the level they can see is all at the same height. So that's something interesting you need to think about. Economic thought. This is all about the origins of economic ideas. And in the 18th century, Adam Smith, who's considered the father of economics, he considered this laissez-faire system, which means let it be. And it's about the invisible hand. So this is something we'll look at in microeconomics about the invisible hand, and it's about how markets work and their functioning, how they're independent, they can work by themselves and allocate resources. That's basically what Adam Smith talked about. So he was some might call him a classical economist. I believe classical economist is the right word. So he believed that intervention is not that needed. So he believed in the free market system, which is why laissez-faire is to do with let it be. 19th century, you have classical macroeconomics and talk about utility, which is the arbitrary concept of satisfaction gained by an economic activity. So you could say, oh, from playing video games, I get 2.5 utils, right? They're arbitrary units. They're not actual units, but it's helpful in calculations, especially with the law of diminishing marginal utility, which we'll get into in microeconomics. As you can see, I have a lot of concepts that I'm going to get into in the future, and that's the thing about this introduction to economics unit, which is going to link a lot to the future topics we study. So you might find them a bit confusing right now, but that's completely okay. That's completely understandable. It'll make a lot more sense soon enough. And the concept of a margin is the idea that one more unit of production or one more bit of anything. So the margin of consumption would mean consuming one more unit, and marginal production would mean producing one more unit. Margin just means one more. Classical macroeconomics. Say's law is not actually in the syllabus, so I'm not going to explain it. Marxist criticism of classical economic thought. You know Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the guy who talked a lot about command economies and in communism, I believe, and he thinks that governments are needed, not like classical economies believe, where they think that it's just the economy that's important. So that's the conflicting idea there. You probably know a lot about Karl Marx, so you can think about what it means when Karl Marx is criticizing classical economics. Karl Marx as a support of communism against classical economics. 20th century Keynesian revolution. So John Maynard Keynes was this economist, and he wasn't a communist, but he realized that sometimes, in terms of macroeconomic policy, you can't just expect the economy to get better on its own. You can't expect the laissez-faire. You have to actually do something. In some circumstances, the intervention is actually needed, and this is quite an interesting topic we'll get into in macro. 21st century, increasing dialogue with other disciplines such as psychology and behavioral economics. That's something in the new syllabus, and this is to do with the idea of sciences working together. You won't, if you look here, depth of teaching is only assessment objective 2, so it's going to be very lightly assessed. Generally, it won't be like a 15 marker question on the economic thought. There won't be something like that, so you guys don't need to stress too much. And you see society and environment appreciate the compelling reasons for moving towards a circular economy. So it's to do with the idea of movement of um, money, like in the circular flow of income, how that's kind of desirable, where there's a lot of interdependence between different sectors of the economy. And by sectors, I mean like the household sector, business sector, financial, government, and foreign sector. And if I'm not mistaken, that is all of Unit 1 in 30 minutes. So 30 minutes was actually longer than I planned on taking for this video. I expected it to be a bit sooner, but I realized that when we explain these topics and you need to explain it to a certain degree, it does get quite time consuming. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please don't forget to support the channel. It really helps me out. This channel is quite small, just starting out, and I really appreciate any help, whether it's a like, subscription, or a comment on a future video I'd make. You guys want me to make, that is. And if you guys have any questions regarding what I just said, please type that in the comments, and I'll be able to answer you soon enough. Also, like I said, video recommendations. If you guys want me to cover a specific topic that is just for you, I'll be happy to do that. So just leave a comment and I'll get to it. Other than that, guys, see you in a future video. Peace out.